Good evening, this is the evening from the New York Times for Friday, July 31st, 2026. I'm Evan Gorlick, and here's the latest at the end of the week. We begin tonight on the northern coast of Africa, where a staggering humanitarian and political crisis unfolded over the last 2 days. Tens of thousands of migrants, the vast majority of them young Moroccan men, surged into Ceuta, a tiny Spanish-governed peninsula that juts into the Mediterranean just across the Strait of Gibraltar. They climbed over border fences, some 6 meters high, and swam the narrow channel, sometimes for hours, to reach the shore. At least 60 people have died, though a government representative in Ceuta later put the toll at 67. For a territory that normally houses just 83,000 residents, the sudden arrival of what officials estimate was at least 50,000 people created an immediate catastrophe. Spain's pro-immigration government deployed the military to reinforce overwhelmed police officers, and local authorities said they had no way to feed or shelter the new arrivals, many of whom hadn't eaten in nearly 2 days. The scenes on the beach were chaotic. By Friday afternoon, Spanish authorities said the vast majority of those who had crossed had already been returned to Morocco, but hundreds, perhaps thousands, still lingered on the sand. Several migrants told reporters that Moroccan authorities had effectively encouraged the crossing. "You ask why everyone came, because there's no work in Morocco," said a Jubilaret, a 24-year-old Moroccan man wearing a beat-up soccer jersey. Others said they were motivated by social media messages claiming the border was open, though the origin of those messages remains unclear. The mass crossing has also ignited a political firestorm across Europe. Far-right leaders, including Jordan Bardella in France, Giorgia Meloni in Italy, and Nigel Farage in Britain, seized on the chaos as proof of what they call the perils of Spain's migrant-friendly policies. And here in the United States, President Trump used the crisis to warn Americans about voting for Democrats in November. While the situation in Ceuta dominates headlines across the Atlantic, the White House made its own major foreign policy announcement last night. President Trump declared that his Board of Peace, an international organization he created earlier this year to oversee a Gaza ceasefire, had reached a new deal to begin disarming Hamas. This morning, the board released a detailed 15-point plan outlining concessions each side must make. The text says the parties have 2 weeks to set a schedule for carrying them out. For Hamas to disarm, Israel must suspend its military operations and relocate its troops to an agreed-upon withdrawal line. In its initial response today, Hamas said the first step would be for Israel to commit to ending attacks, and linked the turnover of what it called heavy weapons to a list of other conditions. Israel has not yet issued a formal statement. Experts and officials have raised serious doubts about whether either side will follow through. Critical questions remain. Does Hamas need to relinquish all of its weapons, and to whom? Today, Trump said the Board of Peace would take possession of Hamas's weapons, contradicting officials who said the weapons would be turned over to Palestinian authorities. The board itself said Thursday evening that Hamas had agreed to a detailed roadmap on disarmament, but as our correspondents note, Hamas has long regarded giving up its weapons as tantamount to surrender. Now to the American West, where another kind of crisis is unfolding, one measured not in people but in acre-feet. The Trump administration released a plan today that would impose potentially drastic water cuts on Arizona, Nevada, and California from the Colorado River over the next decade. As regional temperatures have risen, and this weekend, record high temperatures are expected across the western U.S., the river has shrunk, spawning bitter disputes over access to its dwindling supply. Under the administration's plan, downstream Sun Belt communities, cities like Phoenix, Las Vegas, and Los Angeles, will bear the brunt of the cuts, rather than upstream Mountain West communities. The proposal is meant to break a logjam among the 7 states that rely on the Colorado, but it raises the potential for complex legal battles that could play out for years. The administration's move signals a significant shift in federal water policy, and it comes as Lake Powell and Lake Mead hover at critically low levels. Staying in Washington, a flurry of other Trump administration developments. The president, backtracking on comments he made yesterday, once again insisted that Todd Blanche should be confirmed as Attorney General, escalating his confrontation with the Senate. His comments threw the nomination further into doubt, even as he appeared to validate the concerns fueling Republican opposition by defending the idea of a federal fund for those claiming unfair prosecution, a plan that prompted a GOP revolt in May. Meanwhile, Justice Department prosecutors are botching their case against a group of Minnesota protesters, and, notably, Don Lemon, the former CNN anchor. The case stems from a January demonstration at a St. Paul church against the administration's immigration crackdown. Lawyers say the problems plaguing the prosecution have not only hurt the government's chances but have also undermined the bonds of trust prosecutors traditionally enjoy in court. The White House is also preparing a major rollback of federal requirements for Head Start, the preschool program for poor children. Proposed changes would strip away most of the program's 133 pages of standards, covering math and literacy curriculums, class sizes, medical screenings, home visits, even a requirement that children brush their teeth after meals. Advocates warn it could gut the program's long-standing anti-poverty mission. And the State Department plans to expand access to limited-edition U.S. passports featuring President Trump's image. The commemorative passports, intended to honor the nation's 250th anniversary, were released earlier this month in Washington. An additional 250,000 will be made available after 30,000 Americans phoned a passport call center since July 4 looking to apply for that specific passport. Let's turn to the economy and a story that reads like a parable for the AI age. Larry Ellison, Oracle's 81-year-old billionaire founder, briefly became the richest person in the world last year after throwing his company headfirst into the AI boom. He built massive data centers around the world. Oracle's stock rose 43%. But the bet was built on an astronomical amount of debt billions borrowed to finance those data centers. As investors got a clearer picture, Oracle's stock cratered, and its credit rating neared junk status. The company's fortunes now embody a bigger risk facing the U.S. economy. Is the AI boom a soon-to-be catastrophic bubble? The Times magazine has a full investigation into Ellison's gamble, and the takeaways are sobering. Ellison went from being the star of the first formal news conference of the second Trump administration, where the president announced the largest AI infrastructure project by far in history, to facing questions about whether his company's debt load is sustainable. The AI sector's growing pains were on display elsewhere this week. Anthropic, the AI startup, disclosed Thursday that several of its state-of-the-art models recently broke into the systems of 3 outside organizations. The attacks, dating back to April, were discovered during a review spurred by a similar disclosure from rival OpenAI last week. Anthropic did not name the affected organizations but said it had informed them this week. It's a striking reminder that as these systems become more capable, their ability to act autonomously and unpredictably grows. And companies across the board are rushing to close deals while the regulatory environment remains favorable. Giant utility mergers don't come along often, but NextEra Energy and Dominion Energy are attempting a $67 billion tie-up. Cisco went big in March with a $29 billion acquisition of Jetro Restaurant Depot. And this month, Stripe and a private equity firm announced a major deal. As one observer put it, companies are eyeing the most favorable regulatory environment in years and moving fast while they can. Now a quick roundup of other major stories. In Arizona, the Pima County Sheriff's Department released 2 ransom notes in the kidnapping of Nancy Guthrie, the 84-year-old mother of Today Show anchor Savannah Guthrie. The first, sent a day after her disappearance nearly 6 months ago, said she was safe but scared. A second note, sent several days later, said she had died unexpectedly of a medical condition. The notes suggest her abductors may not have intended to kill her, and their release signals how little progress the investigation has made. Energy markets. The war with Iran has driven oil profits to their highest levels in years. International oil prices averaged around $96 a barrel in the second quarter, up 45% from the same period last year. ExxonMobil, the largest U.S. oil company, earned $14.53 billion in the April through June period, more than twice what it made in the second quarter of 2025. Chevron and other majors reported similarly blockbuster earnings. In France, after fires burned forests outside Bordeaux in 2022, the worst blaze in decades, President Emmanuel Macron called on rural villages to implement long-ignored forestry rules. The Times found that few changes were made. Under French rules, homeowners must clear vegetation within roughly 50 yards of their houses. In the 23 villages analyzed, that largely didn't happen. Satellite imagery and interviews with mayors, foresters, and firefighters reveal a pattern of non-enforcement that leaves communities vulnerable. At the Federal Reserve, Chairman Kevin Warsh is considering reducing the number of regularly scheduled meetings for setting interest rates. The Fed's policy committee has met at least 8 times a year for decades. Cutting that frequency would represent the biggest operational change since Warsh became chairman. He raised the idea at the Fed's gathering in Jackson Hole, arguing that fewer meetings could allow for more deliberation and reduce market volatility. In Pakistan, rescuers searching for 10 mountaineers missing after an avalanche on Broad Peak, one of the world's highest mountains, recovered 4 bodies on Friday. Among the victims, Nadira Al-Harthi, the first Omani woman to summit Everest, American climbers Sarah Mallory Geiss, and Pir Bahadur Gurung. Renowned British Nepali climber Nirmal Purja remains missing. The military plans to screen troops for low testosterone, but no major medical organizations recommend universal screening, and there are risks to treatment. One man who took testosterone for 20 years described feeling like he had a coiled spring in my body wound real tight, with increased aggression that sometimes erupted over minor incidents. On Capitol Hill, Republican lawmakers quietly blocked a proposal to expand health coverage for in vitro fertilization for service members and their families, a notable shift from previous years when bipartisan support included it in the annual defense bill. The move heeds calls from anti-abortion groups to limit access to a fertility option President Trump vowed to make more widely available. And in London, Boy George's manager pulled him from a West End production of Jesus Christ Superstar after the singer posted a pro-Israel reggae song about October 7 on his X account. Lyrics included "You say genocide / I say war" and references to young girls raped against trees, murdered brutally / for the crime of dancing. The track caused a furor online, and the singer was removed from his scheduled 2-week stint as King Herod at the London Palladium. Time now to unwind. Spider-Man: Brand New Day opens today, and it's a deliberate departure from the multiverse-hopping, alien-battling spectacle of recent entries. In this film, Peter Parker, played again by Tom Holland alongside Zendaya, contends with a rundown New York apartment and personal life as much as web-shooting superpowers. Director Destin Daniel Cretton and Sony Pictures chief Tom Rothman debated the meaning of grounded before signing on. "If the intention was to go bigger, I definitely would not have done this movie," Cretton said. The filmmakers are betting that a smaller, more intimate approach can breathe life into a genre struggling at the box office. Our critic writes that Brand New Day feels like a cap on the character's growing up arc, but it's not as fun as the previous films. Speaking of quiet dedication, at a warehouse tucked away in an industrial corner of Queens, books of all shapes, sizes, and colors fly across conveyor belts, destined for 150 library branches across New York City. It's a symphony of barcodes and Dewey Decimals, overseen by an unlikely conductor, Salvatore Megadino, 65, a one-time police department captain who has run this operation for 20 years. Today is his last day before retirement. Tens of thousands of books are sorted each day under his watchful eye, a logistical ballet that keeps the city's libraries stocked. A few conversation starters for your dinner table. The TSA found 5 Civil War cannonballs, some as big as grapefruits, in a passenger's checked luggage at Gulf Shores International Airport in Alabama. The inert relics were detected during a routine X-ray scan. The lead officer's first thought: "I couldn't see a fuse and need to get some help quick." As Chipotle expands into Mexico, it faces a unique challenge: convincing Mexicans to buy an Americanized take on their own national cuisine. The chain's first location opened this month in San Pedro Garza Garcia, near Monterrey. Nearly 200 customers lined up for the grand opening, but the real test is whether locals will embrace burritos with cilantro lime rice and sofritas as a regular meal. And archaeologists flying over the southwestern Amazon have discovered hundreds of ancient, monumental designs carved into the earth, geometric earthworks, some more than 2,500 years old. The research, published in Nature, reveals nearly 400 previously unknown geoglyphs, circles, squares, and other figures with connecting roads, dating from 600 BC to 850 AD. They add to growing evidence that the Amazon hosted complex societies long before European colonists arrived. For tonight, cook panzanella, a crunchy-rich Tuscan bread salad. Listen to the Song of the Summer on PodGen. Our critics examine 8 top contenders, from Ella Langley's Juice in Texas to Drake's Janice STFU to Stella Lefty's Boston. Admire the dreamy, Art Nouveau-inspired streetscapes of Helsinki, Finland, shaped by architect Eliel Saarinen. Watch an extraordinary drone video of a humpback whale giving birth off Australia's east coast, possibly a world first. And play today's spelling bee, Wordle, and mini crossword. One last thing before we go: flaming hunks of metal are raining down on houses, farms, and parking lots more often than ever. They're coming from outer space. The math is simple: send more stuff into space, and more falls back down. Humans launched more than 300 rockets last year, nearly 4 times as many as in 2016, and the U.S. Space Force this year issued alerts for hundreds more inbound objects than it did a decade ago. When a piece of metal wider than a school bus came hurtling down in a Kenyan village, its crash landing sounded like a thunderclap. Villagers took selfies. "People were thinking this is the end of the world," one man said. "Have a cosmic evening. Thanks for reading." This has been the evening from the New York Times. I'm Evan Gorlick. We'll see you tomorrow.